The night was heavy with an eerie stillness, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Sarah sat on her bed, the soft glow of her bedside lamp casting flickering shadows across the room. Outside, the dark sky rumbled like an angry beast, warning her of the storm that had yet to unleash its fury. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change in her life, something deeper than a mere storm. Just last week, she had returned to her family home from college, the weight of exams and friendships fading into the background. Yet tonight, the familiar walls felt foreign, cold, as if they were cloaked with secrets. Shadows danced along the edges, whispering stories she had yet to hear. Alone, she was lost in a whirlpool of thoughts, contemplating directions life might take, both hopeful and horrifying. As she flipped through a tattered journal, her mind drifted. What if she didn't just chase dreams, but actually caught them? The question clawed at her. The prospect tantalized and terrified her in equal measure, but she pushed the thoughts away, sinking deeper into the soft embrace of her blankets. Then came a howl-a-long, plaintive cry that seeped through the cracked window, reverberating in her chest like the thunder above. It was unexpected and piercing, sending a shiver up her spine. What could it be? In her small town, strange noises at night often led to mischief, neighborhood cats fighting, or perhaps a raccoon rummaging through garbage. But something in that howling made her heart race, resonating with an inexplicable sense of urgency. With hesitant steps, she crossed the room and peered out the window. Rain poured down in thick sheets, blurring the views of familiar sights. The streetlights stood like lost sentinels, their glow failing to penetrate the downpour. She shook her head, dismissing her thrill-seeking instincts, which urged her to venture outside and investigate. Just as she turned to return to bed, she caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows, a flash of fur darting across the street. Was it merely a trick of the light, or was something truly out there? The thudding in her chest grew louder, competing with the drumming rain. "Stay calm, Sarah," she murmured to herself. But that quiet voice of reason was drowned out by curiosity. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the back of the house, breaking her trance. Heart racing, she ran out of her room and down the hall to investigate. She could barely make out the outlines of family pictures along the wall, and they seemed almost to watch her with curiosity as she passed. Just as she reached the back door, another sound followed. This time it was rhythmic barking, urgent and filled with energy. It was near, too near for comfort. Sarah hesitated, heart in her throat and mind racing. It could be dangerous after all. Who knew what kind of animal could be lurking? Yet something tugged at her feet, urging her to open the door. Gathering her courage, she flung open the door, and to her shock, 3 dogs charged past her, bounding excitedly into the house. They skidded across the wooden floor, their wet fur glistening in the low light. One was a golden retriever with a big fluffy tail that wagged like a flag of friendship. The second was a sleek black Labrador that appeared to take charge, and the third, a scruffy little terrier, scurried about, barking in pure delight. The chaos felt like a scene from a dream, messy, spontaneous, and utterly unreal. "What the?" Sarah gasped, laughter and confusion mixing in her voice. The dogs were a whirlwind of energy, each trying to assert their presence as they explored the space. She knelt down, laughter bubbling up, reaching out to pat the golden retriever, who gentled into her touch, eyes sparkling with mischief. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway, and Jake appeared, his dark hair slightly tousled. His eyes widened in surprise at the unexpected visitors. "Did you let 3 dogs in?" he exclaimed, barely holding back his laughter. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, amusement dancing in his gaze. "Me? I thought they were following you," Sarah shot back playfully, the anxiety from moments ago dissipating. Jake stepped further into the room, the tension that often hung in the air between them melting with each passing second. "Good point," he admitted, stepping further in and kneeling to greet the furry trio. The Labrador nuzzled his hand appreciatively. "Where did they come from?" "They don't look like the neighborhood strays." As Sarah shrugged, a thought crossed her mind. This sudden arrival felt almost symbolic, as if these dogs had appeared just when she needed a distraction from her own worries. They tumbled past her, seeking affection, their playfulness a welcome contrast to her earlier tension. "I don't know, but I definitely didn't order any new pets," she laughed, feeling lighter. Jake watched her with a twinkle in his eye, the bond between them growing stronger with every joke and playful gesture. Maybe they're a sign, he suggested, standing up and brushing his hands on his jeans. Maybe we should adopt them. If they can survive a storm like this, they must have some serious life skills. Or they're just really good at running away from home, Sarah replied, smirking. But hey, how cool would it be to have 3 dogs? We'd be like the ultimate dog family. The thought lingered in the air, weaving laughter and warmth through the room. The dogs, sensing the good vibes, began to settle down. One by one, they flopped onto the floor, their excitement dwindling into sweet exhaustion. As she sat down beside them, she felt something visceral awaken within her. The warmth of companionship enveloped her like a blanket, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a little spark of hope ignite, teasing the edges of her chaotic emotions. The night still rumbled with thunder, yet it no longer felt threatening. Instead, it became a comforting rhythm that cradled her thoughts. Jake plopped down next to her, a casual smile on his face. You know, sometimes I think these kinds of nights are what we really need to clear our heads. Yeah, Sarah agreed, tugging absently at the scruffy terrier's ear. I think I needed something to shake up my boring routine. Boring? Jake scoffed playfully. Who would instead want to have simple moments when life offers stormy nights and running dogs? This is the kind of chaos that makes life interesting. The two settled into a comfortable silence, surrounded by the gentle sounds of rain and the quiet breathing of their new companions. It felt strange yet soothing, knowing that even amidst uncertainty, they had each other, and as they shared glances, unspoken promises and dreams lingered in the air, weaving an intricate tapestry of hope, friendship, and the thrill of new beginnings. The storm raged outside, but in this moment, within the 4 walls of their home, warmth and connection blossomed, hinting at the adventure and emotional journey that awaited them, the night of secrets. The storm rumbled on, the rain a relentless backdrop, as Sarah and Jake sat cross-legged on the floor, their surroundings transformed into a makeshift sanctuary. The 3 dogs had made themselves comfortable, lolling about with an air of ownership, the golden retriever resting his head on Jake's knee, the terrier snuggled against Sarah's side, and the Labrador watching over them with a protectiveness that felt oddly reassuring. "Do you think they belong to someone?" Sarah asked, pulling away from the attentive terrier to glance at Jake, hoping for an answer that could anchor her thoughts. "Maybe, but they seem pretty comfortable here," Jake replied with a grin, scratching the retriever behind its ears, eliciting a satisfied sigh from the furry creature. "Besides, I doubt anyone would let their dogs roam during a storm like this. We should definitely treat them as our temporary guests." "Right," she nodded, feeling a subtle weight lift from her shoulders. The dogs had unknowingly alleviated her anxieties, allowing her to step momentarily away from her thoughts and delve into this spontaneous adventure. As minutes passed in delightful chaos, they shared stories, each dog bringing a laugh, a shared joke, an outburst of joy. Sarah felt the lively energy bounce between them, weaving a shared tapestry of laughter and lightheartedness. The clouds clung tightly to the night sky, and with each clap of thunder, the world outside felt increasingly distant. "Do you remember that time we tried to build a treehouse?" Jake asked, his voice laced with nostalgia. "You were so adamant about having a secret fort, but we ended up covered in dirt and mosquito bites instead. How can I forget?" She laughed, the memories flooding back. "You insisted we use that old creaky ladder. I thought we were going to plummet to our doom." "Well, you wanted to reach for the stars," he teased, flashing her that signature grin that made her heart flutter. "And I didn't want to be the one who held you back." His words hung in the air, thick with unspoken feelings. Sarah turned her gaze to the floor, suddenly more interested in the pattern of the carpet than in the warmth of Jake's smile. Without meaning to, the laughter faded and the atmosphere shifted uncomfortably. "Hey, Sarah." Jake's voice broke the silence, and she glanced up to see a seriousness shaping his features. "If you ever feel like, I don't know, that your dreams are unattainable or you're just stuck, I want you to know you don't have to go through that alone. I'm here." His words wrapped around her heart like a warm blanket, igniting a flicker of hope. Yet another layer of fear crept in, unwilling to let go. "Thanks, Jake, that means a lot, really. But sometimes, I wonder if I'm just dreaming about things too big for me. What if I fail? Jake shifted closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. Look, everyone feels lost sometimes. It's normal. If you don't take risks, how will you know what you're truly capable of? You've got the potential to achieve great things. I mean it. She met his gaze, the depth of his sincerity leaving her momentarily breathless. But before she could respond, another clap of thunder pulled her attention to the window, where the sheets of rain obscured the view. It felt as though the world outside was alive, urging her to grow, to break free from the confines of her own mind. Maybe we just need to find our paths together, she suggested, veering the conversation back towards the lightness they both craved. Like these dogs, they're on their own little adventure right now, just like us. Exactly. We're all just figuring things out as we go, he chuckled, ruffling the retriever's fur. And sometimes, the most unexpected journeys can lead to the most profound connections. The room sighed with laughter, but beneath it laid an irresistible tension, one that had been building like an approaching storm cloud. Just as she was about to refocus on the dogs, almost as if they sensed the gravity of the conversation, the Labrador stood abruptly, barking at the door. In that instant, the atmosphere grew heavy, a mix of excitement and tension electrifying the air as Sarah exchanged glances with Jake. What could have sparked his sudden alertness? Cautiously, they rose to investigate. Maybe it's just the wind, Sarah said, though she could feel her heart racing, a sense of anticipation pulsating through her veins. Jake nodded but moved towards the door, curiosity igniting in his eyes. As they approached cautiously, the Labrador continued barking, shifting back and forth on its paws, entirely captivated by something outside. Sarah peeked over Jake's shoulder, straining her ears to detect any sound that might explain the dog's agitation. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from the other side of the door, a sound so strange it sent chills racing down her spine. It seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of the night. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her heart pounding at the uncertainty. "I did," Jake murmured, his voice steady yet laced with intrigue. "Stay here. I'll check." Jake, ever the protective figure in her life, stepped back and opened the door with a cautious creak. The dogs rushed forward as if compelled by an invisible force, their earlier excitement morphing into pure curiosity. Jake turned back to Sarah, eyes bright with a mix of thrill and caution. Whatever's out there, it seems to have their attention. Before Sarah could register her next move, all three dogs darted outside, a whirlwind of fur and barks pulling Jake along with them, leaving her torn between fear and exhilaration. "Jake!" she called, heart racing as she rushed after him. The rain had lessened to a drizzle, but the darkness felt thicker than ever. They dashed out into the wet night, instinctively following the dogs as they raced towards the edge of their backyard, where the trees parted to reveal a small path leading deep into the woods. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the excitement of something unspoken. "What are they after?" Sarah panted, her breath mingling with the cool air that filled her lungs, invigorating and frightening all at once. "Let's find out," Jake shouted back, his own excitement palpable. The dogs danced ahead, their enthusiastic barks reverberating through the night. As they pushed deeper into the woods, the canopy of leaves shielded them from the faint moonlight, enveloping them in shadows. The world felt alive, teeming with potential and intrigue. Sarah couldn't help but feel a shiver run down her spine, not from fear, but from sheer anticipation. Here they were, on an adventure, veering away from their routine and delving into the unknown. Every step they took whispered promises of something unexpected. Suddenly, one of the dogs stopped, its body rigid and alert, a low growl emanating from its throat. The shadows shifted around them, creating an aura of suspense. "Do you see something?" Jake murmured, moving closer to Sarah, wrapping an arm around her as if to shield her from whatever lay ahead. His touch sent ripples of warmth through her, igniting a sense of safety amidst the rising tension. Before they could process further, another loud thud echoed nearby, and out from the darkness stumbled a figureya woman, drenched to the bone, her wide eyes nearly glowing in the dim light. "Help me," she gasped, collapsing to the ground, breathless and terrified. The dogs rushed towards her, surrounding her with their unwavering loyalty, sniffing and nudging her as if to comfort her. Sarah and Jake exchanged bewildered glances, an instinctual urge to aid resonating within them. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, kneeling beside the stranger, concern flooding his voice. "Please, I need help," the woman stammered, shivering uncontrollably as she looked up at them, her pale face illuminated by the sporadic glimmers of moonlight. "I was running from something." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, her heart racing as the storm outside began to fade, replaced by a bizarre tension in the air. "What were you running from?" "Something in the woods. It was after me." Her voice trembled as she pulled herself into a sitting position, gripping Jake's sleeve as if he were her only lifeline. "I don't know what it was, but I could feel it. Something dark, something alive." A surge of disbelief raced through Sarah, mingling with trepidation. The air was charged as she met Jake's gaze, sensing their own hearts pounding in unison. "We need to get her inside," Jake said decisively, his protective instincts flaring like a beacon. "But what if it comes after her?" Sarah replied, confused and scared. Yet deep down, she knew they couldn't leave the woman here. Something compelled her to help. They pulled her to her feet, tucking the woman between them as they moved quickly back towards the house. With each step, the tension thickened, leaving an imprint of fear behind them. The night that had once felt alive now brimmed with uncertainty. What had she brought along with her into their world? After a tense sprint, they managed to reach the sanctuary of the house, slamming the door shut behind them. The adrenaline coursed through their veins as they quickly ushered the woman to the living room, where the dog settled at their feet, still watchful and alert. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, her voice softer now as the woman leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath. "Do you need anything, water?" "Please," the woman replied, her voice rough but grateful. Jake dashed to the kitchen, filling a glass and handing it to her. The room hung heavy with the weight of unasked questions, curiosity dancing in the shadows. Sarah exchanged a glance with Jake, silently deciding to let the stranger find her footing before probing her for details. As the woman drank, they could see the fear slowly melting from her features, replaced by gratitude mixed with lingering panic. I don't know how to explain," she stammered. "I ran into the woods after my dog. I thought I lost her, and when I found her, something else found me, something terrifying and dark." "Your dog?" Jake asked, a mixture of perplexity and concern flashing across his face. "What happened?" "I don't know. It was just instinct. I saw her, and then it was like I could feel eyes on me, something lurking beyond the trees. I knew I had to escape." Sarah felt a shiver run through her. Grappling with the remnants of belief within her, there was a palpable weight in the air, as if the forest itself had unleashed something ancient and biding its time beneath the surface. "Do you think it followed you?" Sarah questioned, her heart racing once more. "Maybe." The woman nodded, a flicker of fear returning to her eyes. "I could feel its presence. It wasn't just a wild animal, it felt conscious." Jake stepped forward, resting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now. We can help you. Let us know what you need. I just need to rest, to breathe." She swallowed hard, looking between them, and the tension began to lift just slightly. "Thank you for saving me." Sarah sensed the connection forming an unspoken understanding weaving around them all. Here they were, facing fear, confronting the unknown together, bound by a shared experience that brought them closer. As the night continued to beat softly against the windows, the world outside felt like a dark labyrinth filled with mysteries awaiting to be unearthed. The storm had awakened an emotional journey that would propel Sarah and Jake further into the unknown, challenging their fears and forging stronger bonds in pursuit of those elusive dreams. And as they settled in for the night with a wary curiosity, the adventure had only just begun. A night of reflection. The storm outside had subsided to a gentle drizzle, but the air in the house felt charged with energy, as if the night had seen too much and was holding its breath. Sarah, Jake, and their unexpected guest, the woman with the haunted gaze, gathered in the living room, each lost in their thoughts. The 3 dogs lay around them, providing a calming presence amidst the underlying tension. The woman, who introduced herself as Chloe, had finally managed to gather herself, but still radiated an air of distress. She wrapped her arms around her knees, staring blankly at the wall, clearly processing her terrifying encounter in the woods. "Do you want to talk about it?" Sarah ventured cautiously, unsure if probing would help or hinder the situation. Chloe took a deep breath, her eyes flickering towards Sarah with a mix of fear and gratitude. "I don't know if I can explain it. I shouldn't have been out there. I just wanted to find my dog. But when I did, that thing was watching me." "What did it look like?" Jake asked, leaning forward, his interest piqued. "It was dark, like a shadow, but it had form. At first I thought it might have been a bear or something, but there was something inherently wrong about it. It sounds crazy, but I felt it in my bones that it was not just a creature of this world." The room felt colder as Chloe described her experience, and Sarah instinctively moved closer to Jake, seeking his protective presence. "Could it have been just a trick of the light? Maybe you were too deep in thought," Jake suggested, trying to rationalize the fear that had gripped Chloe. "No," Chloe shook her head vehemently. "It felt real. It felt alive. And when I turned to leave, I heard it behind me. A whisper, almost. But it wasn't words. It was a feeling, a command. I had to run." "Do you think it could come back?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Maybe. I don't know." Chloe's voice wavered, but there was an underlying strength as she continued. "But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was something more than just a wild animal. Whatever it was watching." Sarah glanced at Jake, who seemed deep in thought, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. The room was suffused with an unnameable tension, and fear began to uncoil in Sarah's stomach. Was it possible that the mysterious energy of the woods had found its way into their sanctuary? "What if we explored the woods tomorrow?" Jake suggested, his eyes sparkling with intrigue. "Maybe we could learn more about whatever Chloe saw." "Are you serious?" Sarah whispered, incredulous at the idea. "After hearing her story, you want to go back?" "Yes, I do. If there's something out there, if our instincts are telling us there's more, I say we check it out. We can't let fear dictate our lives," Jake replied, folding his arms as if challenging her reluctance. Chloe glanced between them, uncertainty flickering in her gaze. "You don't have to do that for me. I'm just a stranger." "No, you're not," Jake countered, his resolve unwavering. "You're part of this now. Besides, we never back down from a challenge, right, Sarah?" There it was again, the intimate bond they had forged through their mutual desire for adventure, their willingness to face the unknown together. It propelled her heart forward, battling against her sensible mind. "Okay," Sarah relented, feeling buoyed by the energy in the room, albeit still nervous about the repercussions of provoking whatever lay in the woods. "But we need to be careful." With what seemed like newfound determination, they settled back into conversation, the previous tension relaxing as they shared stories, dreams, and the challenges they faced. Jake spoke about his aspirations to travel and escape the confines of their small town, while Chloe opened up about her struggles as an artist, finding inspiration in moments of fear and wonder. As the night grew darker, the walls seemed to lean in closer, absorbing their stories, their hopes and fears, holding it all like a fragile secret. Moments later, the dogs stirred, their ears perked and noses twitching as if picking up on something. The three of them paused, the warm atmosphere evaporating as the growls broke the silence. "What is it?" Sarah asked, her instincts kicking in once more. "I don't know." Jake crouched down to the Labrador, whose body was tense, fur standing on end. "But I don't like it." As if on cue, a low growl emanated from outside, sending chills racing down Sarah's spine. The noise built in intensity, echoing through the stillness of the house, steadily morphing into a chorus of growls. "It's back," Chloe whispered, her eyes wide with fear as she clutched her knees tightly. Jake stood decisively and motioned for them to stay calm. "Let's check it out. We can't just stay here. Are you insane?" Sarah exclaimed, panic rising in her voice. "What's out there could be dangerous." "I know," Jake confessed. "But if we stay inside, whatever it is, it could come for us anyway. We need to take charge." Chloe nodded, her expression one of reluctant determination. "If you're going, I want to go too." "You shouldn't have to face it alone." Uneasy agreement settled among them as they grabbed flashlights and steeled themselves for the unknown. The dogs led the way, transforming their anxiety into a kind of adrenaline-fueled energy. They moved cautiously towards the back door, hearts pounding in unison. The rain had turned into a mere mist, creating a surreal ambiance as they stepped outside. The world around them felt suspended, caught between night and dawn, shadows flickering with uncertainty. Jake led the way, illuminating the path before them, while Sarah and Chloe followed closely, their eyes darting into the inky darkness, seeking the source of the growling that had risen to a crescendo. The air felt almost electric, charged with an otherworldly intensity that hummed in her veins. "We need to keep moving," Jake urged, holding his flashlight steady as they advanced toward the edge of the woods. They paused for a moment, setting their nerves as Jake scanned the tree line, where thick branches stretched overhead like skeletal fingers. Then came the growl again, distinct, and sharp echoing through the trees, and sending a rush of fear cascading through Sarah. "Stay, close to me," she whispered to Chloe, who nodded but appeared equally tense. They moved forward, compelled by an urgency that overshadowed their fears. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the physical landscape shifted. Trees loomed larger, twisting into grotesque shapes that felt ominous under the pale light of their flashlights. "What if we don't find anything?" Chloe murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we do?" Jake countered, his eyes holding an unwavering confidence that fueled Sarah's resolve. Just then, the growling came again, louder this time, rising from above. A momentary pause enveloped them like a weight. "What was that?" Sarah whispered, straining to peer into the darkness. "Eyes searching for movement," Jake began, but he was cut off by a sudden rustling in the underbrush that sent the dogs racing ahead, barking and growling in excitement or perhaps agitation. "Stop," Jake called, his voice piercing through the night. But it was too late. The dogs bolted into the darkness, their instincts taking over. "Jake," Sarah yelled, panic coursing through her. "We can't just let them go." Before she could think, she dashed after them, branches whipping at her arms as they chased into the dense woods. The flashlight beam flickered around her, illuminating bits of the wild that felt almost alive, every rustle, every snap of a twig resonating with a growing tension. "Sarah, wait," she heard Jake call from behind, but she pushed forward, adrenaline surging. The dogs led her deeper into the shadows. She could hear them barking, but there was another sound, a low, guttural growl that vibrated in her core, filling her with dread. "What is happening?" Chloe's voice trembled behind her, and all Sarah could think was that they needed to find the dogs. They were leading the way, and Sarah felt an undeniable urge to follow. Then, just as she burst through a thick veil of branches, she skidded to a stop, her breath hitching in her throat. In front of her stood a massive figure, cloaked in shadows, as if the very darkness had taken form. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, large, powerful, an entity that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The growling intensified, and the dogs surrounded the creature, snarling and barking with a determination that awoke an instinctual fear within Sarah. Jake and Chloe meshed into her side, and together they stood frozen in place, caught in a battle between fear and the overwhelming pull of curiosity. "What do we do?" Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible. "Back away slowly," Jake urged, his eyes fixed on the giant shadow ahead. "We don't know what it might do." But even amidst the fear, Sarah felt a strange connection to the creature, a sense of shimmering curiosity, battling against the icy tendrils of terror gripping her heart. Almost instinctively, she took a step forward, her fingers brushing against the cool air as if drawn by an invisible thread. "Sarah, no!" Jake's grip tightened on her arm, pulling her back, but she could see the creature respond to her presence, shifting slightly from its rigid stance. I think it wants us to understand," she stammered, unsure where the conviction was coming from. "Maybe it's not here to hurt us. Understand?" Jake echoed, incredulity creeping into his tone. "What makes you think that?" "Just look," she urged, her heart pounding in her ears. "It feels alive, almost curious, like it's trying to communicate." The dogs continued barking, setting a perimeter around the figure, but slowly, the growling began to wane, as though the creature, sensing a change in energy, was beginning to relent. They held their collective breath, the world around them suspended in a haunting stillness. "What do you see?" Jake whispered, his grip on her arm easing as he turned his focus to her. "I don't know," Sarah breathed, her heart racing, "but I feel it the pull to get closer." With every fiber of her being, she stepped forward, slowly pushing past the dogs who were still growling, though their barks had quieted. The figure loomed before her, unfurling like a flower opening to the dawn. As she drew closer, she saw flickers of light where the darkness danced, illuminating features that shifted between familiar and otherworldly. It was as though the creature was made of shadows, yet hints of iridescent energy pulsed through it, a captivating enigma filled with secrets waiting to be uncovered. And just as she was about to reach out, everything fell silent, the air thickening with palpable tension. The dogs, sensing a moment, ceased their growling, standing at attention. Even Chloe seemed to hold her breath, captivated by the scene unfolding. The creature shifted, tilting its head, its gaze locking onto Sarah's as if assessing her very soul. In that shared moment, she felt a profound connection, an understanding that transcended words. "Please, don't be afraid," she whispered, her heartbeat synchronized with the creature's subtle movements. And then, in a blink, the ethereal being receded into the darkness, fading like a dream you wish to hold on to. The night returned to its former state, the weight of silence descending again. "What just happened?" Jake asked, his voice cutting through the stillness. I think it wanted to show us something," Sarah whispered, disoriented yet exhilarated. "But now it's gone," Chloe blinked, stunned. "That was amazing. And terrifying. What do we do now?" Jake nodded, understanding the mixture of emotions racing through them. "For now, we should probably head back inside," he suggested, casting a cautious glance back toward the trees. "We don't want to push our luck." As they turned to retrace their steps, uncertainty mingled with curiosity in Sarah's chest. They had encountered something beyond explanation, a glimpse of the unknown that might hold answers to the questions brewing between them. But the night was still young, loaded with secrets that lay waiting among the shadows. Together, they made their way back, hearts still pounding, eager for what lay ahead, and united in a shared experience that would forever change the course of their lives. An emotional storm. The trio staggered back into the house, breathless and shaken by what they had just experienced. Their minds raced, each one grappling with the enormity of the encounter. As the door clicked shut behind them, the oppressive weight of the woods lifted, but the tension inside the house hung thick in the air, like static before a storm. "Did that just happen?" Sarah gasped, leaning against the door as if it could shield her from her thoughts. The adrenaline still coursed through her veins, mingling uneasily with the remnants of fear that clung to her like shadow. "Oh, it definitely happened," Jake replied, his voice low and awestruck, a mixture of wonder and anxiety flickering in his eyes. "But what was that thing? And why did it seem almost aware of us?" Chloe stood in the middle of the living room, her expression a mirror of confusion and curiosity. "It felt like it was trying to communicate," she murmured, wrapping her arms around herself. "But what could it want? Why reveal itself to us?" "Maybe we're meant to figure it out," Sarah said, crossing her arms tightly. "Maybe it's a sign, or maybe it's a warning. Or it could just be an animal hiding in the woods," Jake interjected, but even he didn't sound convinced. "But it's unlike anything I've ever seen." The three of them fell into a contemplative silence, the gravity of the night settling over them like a thick fog. The dogs, now slightly calmed, resumed their positions at their feet, but their eyes remained keen, turning towards the door as if expecting another encounter. "I feel like we need to know more," Jake finally said, breaking the stillness. "What if it's connected to something deeper, something that's been lurking there long before we arrived?" "Are you suggesting we go back tomorrow?" Chloe asked, her voice a mixture of apprehension and eagerness. "After what just happened?" "I think we should," Jake insisted. "If that creature is trying to tell us something, we can't leave it at that." Sarah exchanged glances with Chloe, a surge of both fear and resolve battling within her. "What if it's dangerous?" "That's a risk we'll have to take," Jake replied, his voice firm. "But we need to stay together. No one goes off alone." "Let's at least gather supplies, flashlights, maybe snacks," Chloe suggested, her tone shifting from uncertain to practical. "If we're going into the woods, we'll need to prepare." The decision was made, and an electric energy sparked between them. They spent the next hour gathering supplies, flashlights, snacks, and bottled water. Each item felt significant, like a talisman against the uncertainty that awaited them. Once they had gathered everything, Sarah felt a strange mix of excitement and trepidation settle within her. It was as if they were embarking on an adventure, not just into the woods, but into the unknown together. Courage bolstered by camaraderie had replaced the fear that once gripped her heart. "Okay, but if we see anything, we promise to talk it through first, right?" she said. "We'll stick together," Jake affirmed, the warmth of his gaze easing her nerves, no matter what happens. As night fell, the atmosphere thickened with mystery. They ventured outside again, armed with their flashlights and determination. The night air felt electric-charged with anticipation and a hint of lurking danger. Shadows danced around them as they made their way to the edge of the woods, where their encounter had unfolded earlier. Once they reached the tree line, a stillness engulfed them, a contrast to the vibrant energy they had felt before. It was as though the woods were holding their breath. "Waiting. Stay close," Jake instructed, taking the lead as they stepped into the dark underbrush. As they ventured deeper, Sarah could hear the rustling of leaves, the occasional snap of twigs underfoot, and her blood thrummed in her veins. The uncertainty sent prickles of fear creeping across her skin. "What if we find it again?" she whispered, glancing nervously at the shadows surrounding them. "We face it together, remember?" Jake reminded her softly, and it felt as if his words gave her strength. Just then, the wind picked up, swirling around them with a keen intensity, and the trees creaked as if sharing secrets. The dogs remained vigilant, ears perked, noses twitching against the cool air. "Do you hear that?" Chloe suddenly whispered, her voice laced with urgency. They paused, straining to listen. In the distance, a low rumble echoed, reminiscent of the growling they had heard earlier. It pierced the stillness of the night, a sound both unsettling and mesmerizing, a call that seemed to beckon them further into the darkness. "Should we follow it?" Sarah asked, gripping her flashlight tightly as the anxiety curled in her gut. "Yes," Jake said firmly, drawing in a deep breath. "We have to see what it is." They pressed onward, fueled by a mix of dread and curiosity. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating patches of ferns and twisted roots. The path seemed to wind deeper into the heart of the woods, each step echoing with a sense of purpose. As they drew closer to the source of the sound, tension thickened around them like fog. The trees whispered among themselves, the sounds of nature blending into an unsettling symphony. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a clearing. The moon hung high, casting a silvery sheen over the area, illuminating a strange assortment of rocks arranged in a circle. In the center, a low, flickering light pulsed like a heartbeat, mesmerizing and otherworldly. "What is this place?" Chloe breathed, captivated and terrified all at once. "Maybe it's some kind of ritual site," Jake suggested, inching closer, "or perhaps where the creature calls home." As they cautiously approached the circle, the air grew thicker, the energy palpable charged with an electric tension that made Sarah's skin prick. The dogs whined softly, pacing nervously. "I don't think we're alone," Sarah whispered, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. But Jake stepped forward, drawn irresistibly to the light. "What if it holds the answers we need?" "Be careful," Chloe warned, her voice shaking. "We don't know what this is." Just as Jake reached the edge of the light, Sarah suddenly felt a chill wash over her. She glanced behind them, and dread settled into her stomach. A figure was emerging from the shadows at the opposite side of the clearing, dark and indistinct, yet undeniably present. "Jake," she gasped, fear rising in her throat. But Jake had already turned, his expression a mix of awe and confusion as he faced the figure. This time, there was no denying the presence of the creature they had encountered before. Its form shimmered and shifted, and for a heartbeat, it appeared human only to ripple back to its shadowy state. The dogs began to bark anxiously, positioning themselves protectively around Sarah and Chloe. "What do you want?" Jake called out, his voice steady but strained. The figure stepped closer, and in that moment, the pulsing light intensified, illuminating the surroundings in a surreal glow. The ground beneath them trembled gently, as if the earth itself was responding to the creature's presence. Suddenly, the air split with a roaring growl, echoing off the trees and into their bones. It was a reminder of their previous encounter, a warning. Instinct took over, and Sarah stepped backward, trembling, pulling Chloe along with her. "Run!" she shouted, panic surging through her as she felt the raw energy surrounding them become oppressive and overwhelming. But Jake stood firm. "Wait! It's trying to tell us something!" "Tell us what?" Chloe yelled over the din, pushing against the instinct to flee. "What is it?" Before Jake could answer, the creature lunged forward, the light flickering violently as if it were both protecting and threatening them. Sarah felt a magnetic pull toward it, yet terror urged her to escape. It was a battle between curiosity and fear. "Stay back," Jake shouted, raising his flashlight in a desperate attempt to ward off the creature. But as the light caught the figure, it transformed, no longer a shadow but a kaleidoscope of color and light, unfolding into something beautiful yet profoundly unsettling. Words, harsh and spoken from a distance, seemed to wash over them like a tide. Return what was lost. "A cycle must complete." "What does that mean?" Chloe yelled, but her voice was almost lost in the storm. Just then, the circle of rocks lit up in response to the creature's energy, drawing Sarah's attention back. "Wait," she murmured, stepping toward the circle of stones, feeling an invisible connection drawing her closer. "Maybe the circle, Sarah, don't," Jake called, panic threading through his voice. But she was already there, entranced by the pulsing light. She felt her heart align with the rhythm of the creatures around them, each pulse resonating deep within her soul, echoing from the heartbeat of the earth itself. "Return what was lost." The creature roared, and the earth shook violently, sending vibrations through the rock formations. In that moment, realization washed over Sarah like a flood wave of understanding that bound her to the creature and the energy of the forest. They weren't just here to witness. They were meant to participate, to heal something that had been broken. The world around them transformed. The shadows shifted and morphed into haunting figures, distorted and sorrowful. It became clear this was not just about a creature lurking in the woods. It was about the balance of nature itself, the cycle that had been disrupted. "Jake." "Chloe, we have to help," Sarah shouted, the urgency in her voice cutting through their shock. "How?" Chloe gasped, eyes wide with terror as the shadows grew bolder, circling them. "Together, we need to stand around the circle," Sarah urged, spurred by an innate understanding that only grew stronger. "We need to align our energies with the force of this place." Without hesitation, Jake and Chloe joined her in the circle, adrenaline rushing through them as they held hands. The pulsating light began to swirl around them, wrapping them in warmth while the shadows began to dissipate at the boundaries of the circle. "Focus," Sarah commanded, her heart racing as they steadied their breaths, willing their energy to connect and unite. As they concentrated, the creature hovered in the periphery, its presence shifting between shadow and light. They could feel the balance restoring, the energy tightening around them like a cocoon, the shadows receding as their own light grew. "Return what was lost," echoed the creature's voice, no longer a roar but a plea. In unison they closed their eyes, summoning everything they had, their fears, their hopes, their dreams. The bond they shared surged through them, intertwining their spirits with the rhythm of the universe itself. As they embraced this connection, the world erupted around them, a bright flash of light igniting the clearing before exploding outward, reshaping the shadows into forms they recognized. Trees and animals, life returning to where it had been lost. The creature, a spirit of the woods, shifted one last time before dissolving into radiant light that danced among them, threading through the trees, rekindling the heart of the forest. When the light faded and they opened their eyes, silence enveloped the woods, peaceful and warm. They stood there, breathless, all three of them gripped by the enormity of what they had experienced. What just happened? Jake breathed, his voice filled with a mix of awe and disbelief. "I think we did something meaningful," Sarah replied, wonder woven into her voice. But just then, with a sudden flicker, one of the stones at the edge of the circle glowed faintly, a reminder of the connection they had forged. The forest was restored, but they knew that the energies they had interacted with would always stay with them. "I think we need to come back," Chloe stated, her voice steady with newfound determination. "There's so much more to discover." With their hearts still entwined by the wonders they had witnessed, they turned together, walking back toward the path that would lead them home, forever altered by the night that had unfolded into magic, mystery, and unbreakable bonds. As they stepped into the embrace of the woods, they understood that this was only the beginning. A thrilling adventure lay ahead, waiting patiently beneath the shadows of existence, inviting them to explore further.